Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Early voting begins this Saturday with Election Day itself, exactly 2 weeks from tomorrow. In addition to the race for mayor, all 51 city council seats are up for grabs, and tonight we are holding a debate in one of the most closely watched council races, the contest for District 47 in South Brooklyn. The district includes the neighborhoods of Bay Ridge and Coney Island, and in between, portions of Dyker Heights, Bath Beach, and Gravesend. Current council member Justin Brannan is term limited at the end of the year, leaving the seat open. And tonight I'm joined by the two candidates seeking to replace him. Democrat Kayla Santosuosso is a former small business owner who currently serves as chief counsel to Councilman Brannan. And Republican George Sarantopoulos is founder of an ATM and credit card processing company. Thank you both for joining us. So the rules you see on your screen now have been agreed to by the candidates. They will each have 60 seconds for an opening statement. Answers to my questions will generally be limited to 60 seconds, and there will be both a cross-examination round and a lightning round. You can also see this full debate on ny1.com or on the Spectrum News app at any time, and you can join the conversation using the hashtag NY1Debate. Now for opening statements. The order for tonight's opening statements was determined by a random drawing. George Sarantopoulos will go first. You've got 60 seconds.
Thank you. Hi, my name is George Sarantopoulos. I am the Republican candidate running here for District 47. I am a father, husband, business owner, cancer survivor. That recently happened where I found out around this time last year that I had beaten cancer. Now, when you beat cancer, it makes you want to do better for your community, and I wanted to give back to my community. I decided to run because I felt that I've been hearing too much from our neighbors too long, that they can't afford to live here anymore. The quality of life has gone down, and most especially, they don't feel safe anymore in our city. And the political class, the Democratic Party, who's held on to this city for a long time, says, trust us, keep voting for us. Well, it's time for a change. Please consider voting for me.
All right, Kayla Santosuosso.
Thank you for having me. My name is Kayla Santosuosso, and I have been serving people my entire life. I grew up in restaurants, and my husband and I owned a bar and restaurant in Bay Ridge, too. I have worked in nonprofits where I've fought poverty. I've been a city attorney protecting taxpayer dollars from fraud and abuse. And for a number of years now, I've worked for Councilmember Justin Brannan, improving our neighborhoods and solving problems day in and day out. And now I'm running for city council because I want to make sure generations of families can afford to stay and want to stay in Southern Brooklyn. That means that we can afford things like rent and childcare, but it also means that our neighborhoods stay safe, enjoyable, and clean for all. I believe it's important to know how to do this job on day one. I already know who to call when your kid's bus route is too long or a tree is down. I have the know-how and the experience to get the job done on day one, and I won't waste any time delivering for the neighborhoods I love in Southern Brooklyn.
All right, our first topic is going to concern affordability with a particular focus on housing. So I think everyone agrees we have a housing crisis in this city, and to start, I want to ask you guys about the 3 housing-related ballot questions that voters will be voting on in November. They are intended to make it faster and easier to build new housing in the city, in particular affordable housing, but the city council is very much opposed to this because council members will lose some of the power they have over land use issues as a result. So Ms. Santosuosso, let's start with you. How do you plan to vote on questions 2, 3, and 4 on the ballot, and why?
Yeah, well, we're in a time where there's a historically low vacancy rate, and so there is a housing and affordability crisis, and we need to do what we can. Building new housing is not the silver bullet, but it's definitely part of the solution. And this is the most pro-housing city council that we've had in a long time. But I see these proposals as an opportunity for more power to be consolidated within a mayor who may or may not be pro-housing. And the problem is it takes away the ability for council members to be able to fight for things like housing that's more affordable or housing that's built by people with a living wage. And so I think that the districts wouldn't want more of that consolidation into a mayor. They should have city council members who can represent the specific districts and the needs of those districts. We should be building everywhere where it makes sense, where it fits the quality of the neighborhood and where it's already high density. But city council members need to have a say in what works best for their district.
All right, Mr. Sarantopoulos.
Well, I would have to agree with Kayla on that. Nobody wants to live in a bedroom community like ours and find out that there's a greedy developer who built a 10, 20, 30-story building. We want input not only from the councilman or councilwoman who's elected, but we want input from the community board. We don't want that to be pushed off into a mayor's office that really doesn't know what type of housing or what type of housing is actually needed in a community. I would like to see more varied housing. I'd like to see a more robust Mitchell-Lama 2.0. I'd like to see more smaller housing for people just starting out, for working families just starting out, like micro apartments. I think we need to expand the range of housing.
And let me ask you this, the City of Yes initiative was passed last year by the City Council. This was something that was pushed by Mayor Adams and made a number of zoning changes around the city in order to boost the housing supply. It was very controversial. Did you or do you support the City of Yes initiative?
I do not support the City of Yes. Like I said, you want input by your local community board and your local council person. It should not be passed off to the City Hall, like I said, who doesn't really know what the community really needs and what type of housing needs the community has.
And did you support City of Yes?
So City of Yes was an effort to build more housing across the city and to recognize that in order to combat this historically low vacancy rate, we all need to really do our part. I was grateful that Councilmember Brannan was able to make that work, the City of Yes for housing opportunity for our district, meaning that not large swaths of our district were subject to massive increases that would have fundamentally changed the character of our neighborhood. But I think as a city, finding these high density places where it makes sense to build is important. In our district, for instance, we have a large aging population, a senior population that's getting priced out of rentals and is getting priced out of some of home ownership, and we really need more senior housing. And so any opportunity that allows for that kind of thing in a way that doesn't fundamentally change the character of the neighborhood, I think we need to welcome.
And let me just ask you both as a general proposition in terms of affordability, generally speaking, not just limited to housing, is there anything that can really be done on the city level to bring down costs for New Yorkers and particularly for residents in your district?
Yeah, I mean, what we're hearing a lot of is talk about a rent freeze. We're hearing that largely from a mayoral campaign. That's not necessarily within the purview of the city council, but the Rent Guidelines Board is the body, that does sort of weigh in on whether rent stabilized units, the rent in rent stabilized units can be raised or not. We have a lot of rent stabilized units in our district, particularly in Bay Ridge. If the mayor were to appoint Rent Guidelines Board members who agreed that the emergency thing that we needed to do right now was to freeze the rent, that would be something that would make an immediate difference in people's pockets for rent stabilized units. That's an example of one immediate thing we could do. My predecessor, or the current city council member, Justin Brannan, has pushed through legislation in the city council bipartisan to reform our property tax system so that Bay Ridge stops paying disproportionately more than Park Slope and Park Ave, but really that requires work from Albany.
And Mr. Sarantopoulos, same question to you, but also do you support the idea of a rent freeze on rent stabilized
I don't
units?
support the idea of a rent freeze because we are eroding people's property rights. This is not just hurting people that own 200, 300 apartments and the big corporations. This is hurting people that own 2, 3, 4 family homes, owner occupied, and they are not being able, they're losing their rights every day when they cannot evict somebody who hasn't paid the rent in a year or 2 or 3. So I believe that we need to do more to protect those homeowners. We have about 6,000 or 5,000 units that are being warehoused by NYCHA. We need to bring those housing units back online. And we have about 50 to 60,000 units that are being warehoused by private landlords. Mayor Adams had a program, it was about 10 million and only rehabilitated 400 apartments. These landlords, if a rent freeze happens, they're not going to bring them back to market. They're just not, because the incentive, the financial incentive won't be strong enough. So we're we're just going to see more units being warehoused and the affordability crisis even get worse.
All right, let's move on to the topic of public safety, which is always top of mind for voters. Currently, under Mayor Adams, depending on how you look at the statistics, it seems as though, it certainly seems as though homicides and shootings are down, at least if you're looking at the trend lines over the past few years. The trend has been different for certain other crime categories, and there seems to be a perception out there that crime is still at unacceptable levels here in the city. So I guess I would just ask you, and we'll start with you, Mr. Sarantopoulos, is the city safe right now?
I don't think people feel safe. They just don't. And it's death by a thousand cuts, right? It's the little crimes. It's package theft, catalytic converters, muggings. People just don't feel safe on the subway. We have no control of our subway system. It's being overrun by emotionally disturbed people who are not only mentally ill, but they have addiction issues, and they are overtaking our subway. So I don't think people feel safe going to school, going to work. We're in a crisis mode, and we are losing police officers. I want to remind the audience, I'm the only candidate endorsed by the PBA, the LBA, and the DEA that is endorsed by the police unions that can bring safety. The Democratic Party is no longer trusted on this issue anymore.
And Ms. Santosuosso, is the city safe?
So I think what I hear, whether I'm in Bay Ridge or Coney Island, from voters is that they do want to see more patrols in their community and more cops on the beat, more cop cars regularly driving around the district. Out of the two of us in this race, I'm the only one who has to regularly work with our local precincts to work on issues of crime. And we have a very great relationship, and I'm glad that I get to do that. And when I speak with these officers, many of whom I think are upset that I ever got their cell phone numbers because I rely on them too much to do my job. But, they say that they want to be doing more, but that they need more resources, and that really they are tasked with too much, that the NYPD gets tasked with solving so many problems that they really don't have the ability to solve. So I want to work collaboratively with our local precincts to figure out exactly what it is. What are the resources that are needed? What initiatives are there? I think the new quality of life teams are showing really great early results, so I'm feeling pretty optimistic about those.
And in terms of quality of life, or just public safety issues in general, what is happening in your district? Are there public safety issues specific to the 47th Council District, and how would you address that?
Yeah, one issue that I hear on almost every door is the issue of street safety. And that's a pretty broad category, which includes drag racing and speeding. It also includes the loud, illegally modified muffler noise that seems to plague our neighborhoods, as well as mopeds that are on the sidewalk and, just racing through the streets. It's clear that parents are nervous when their kids are crossing the street. Seniors are nervous to cross the street. I had a friend who was killed in 2020 by a driver. And just last week, we had two Xaverian High School kids who were walking home from school and were hit by a driver who went up onto the sidewalk and hit them. And one of them is unfortunately in the hospital right now. So it is a major issue. I hear it all the time across the board. And as someone who drives and rides a bike and walks around, I feel that pressure too. It's something I really want to solve.
And Mr. Sarantopoulos, same question. What are some of the public safety issues in the district, and how would you address them?
I just want to remind, even though Councilman Justin Brannan forgot her name, there was a woman who was burned in our district, burned to death on the subway, Debrina Kawan. And nothing has been done about it. And, to say that you're working with the precincts is laughable, because the current councilman, every precinct in our district is understaffed. We are bringing police officers from Staten Island who don't really have the knowledge of our district, and we are bringing them into our district because every precinct in our community is understaffed. So to say that you understand what's going on is laughable. I'm sorry. This poor woman got burned on the subway, and you guys seem to have forgotten her name. What are we doing to take back our subways?
Can I respond to
Yes.
that, please? I do work with our police officers every day, and they do a tremendous job of what they do. They are tasked with an incredible amount of work. And there are only so many people, and they only have so much of an ability to solve the problems that are in front of them. But I'm so proud of the work that they do, and I want to work collaboratively with them. And as far as Debrina Kawam and the tragic incident that happened with her, I agree. I mean, I do think we need more of a police presence, particularly in our subway stations. That happened in a subway station. There's no indication that she was from Coney Island or had gotten on the train there.
So she didn't deserve safety?
Of course she deserves safety, and I'm calling for more safety. But the idea that she was forgotten or hasn't been regarded by our police officers is frankly just, I think that's unfortunate
I never
to say.
said she was forgotten by police officers. I said she was forgotten by your office, to be clear.
All right, guys, we are going to take a short break. We'll have a lot more from these candidates for City Council District 47 when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where we are bringing you a debate in the race for the 47th City Council District in South Brooklyn. It is time now for the cross-examination. That's when each candidate gets to ask a question of their opponent. And we will start with you, George Sarantopoulos.
Yeah, I mean, it's the issue of public safety. Your boss has said that he wanted to defund the police. Your mayoral candidate says he wants to defund the police at certain times. You've said in the I've talked about the precincts being understaffed. You've said in questionnaires that you would not take support from the police unions or police officers. You've said in questionnaires, the Lambda Democrat Club and the Jim Al's clubs, to be exact, you said that you were against the gang database. Again, you know, you're supporting a candidate, your club, the Bay Ridge Democrats, are supporting a mayoral candidate who wants to defund the police, who believes that violence is an abstract concept. You want to close up Rikers. How can we trust you on law and order? How can we trust you on public safety? How are you going to make people in Coney Island feel safe?
Yeah, I mean, voters can trust me because I do this work day in and day out, and I'm the only person in this race who has the experience day in and day out working with precincts, getting calls from constituents who complain about a handful of issues, a wide range of safety issues, whether it's in Bay Ridge or whether it's in Coney Island, and working collaboratively with the precinct. I'm very lucky that I have a great relationship with them. Look, as a city council member, I won't be able to enforce the laws. I'll only be able to write them. And so I'm very lucky that I already know how to have those relationships. And honestly, on day one, I'm very excited to sit down with our local precincts and say, what is it that you actually want? Because, you know, there's all this talk about hiring 5,000 more police officers or 7,000 more police officers, but what does that matter if at the end of the day, our districts don't get any of those police officers?
So you're for defunding the police?
Absolutely not. I rely upon the police to do the job.
So you are for more NYPD police officers on the street right now?
If our precincts asked for more officers, I would certainly.
But they are asking for it.
All right. Let's switch and go back the other way. Ms. Santosuosso, your turn to ask a question.
George, in a lot of ways, you have made your money on nickel and diming people for basic services. You own ATMs and you charge people high fees in order to take out their cash. You're a landlord who appeared in front of the Rent Guidelines Board in the height of COVID 2021 and begged for a citywide rent increase, despite lots of complaints about not providing heat and hot water to your tenants. And then when you didn't get what you want, you evicted a lot of tenants. I think it was about 7. So we're in the middle of an affordability crisis. Why should people trust that you're the person to address the cost of living?
Well, first of all, I don't nickel and dime customers in my ATM business. I'm actually lower than the banks. Banks are typically now at $3.50 to $4. My typical ATM's at $2 in most bodegas across the city. So let me answer that part of the question. Second part is nobody got evicted during the pandemic. You couldn't evict anyone. So that's a lie right there.
No, since. You've evicted them since you didn't get your rent
increase in
2021.
If they don't pay rent, yes, I have to. I own an SRO. That SRO has not gotten an increase in about 12 to 14 years, approximately. I am a property owner. I have expenses. My real estate tax went up. When you guys were saying we're all in it together, real estate taxes kept going up. So you guys didn't give us a break.
That was a bipartisan bill, by the way, that got passed.
I'm talking about the city council. I'm talking about the city council.
Yeah, correct. A bipartisan bill that was passed by
And Joe Borelli and Justin Brannan promised us tax reform in the beginning of this year, And Joe Borelli's not there, and Justin Brannan was too busy running for controller.
And if he knew anything about the position he was running for, he would know that that requires Albany.
All right, guys, we're going to move on to a few more topics. Let me ask you guys about seniors. Seniors make up, I believe, about 20% of the district. What are some of the issues facing older residents in your district, and what can the city do to address them? Back to you, Ms. Santosuosso.
Yeah, I mean, what I hear from seniors is that they are terrified about their benefits being cut by the federal government, and basically saying that the city is going to need to make up some of that difference, which I agree with. It is not conscionable that we would leave our seniors, who in a lot of ways have built this city, without the benefits that they need to survive. My opponent, who brings Trump cutouts, cardboard cutouts to his events, presumably endorses the fact that we have cut all of these essential benefits for seniors. And I truly don't know how they're going to make ends meet. The other thing that I hear is about retiree health care. Which for city workers who have retired and they wanted to keep their Medicare and their health benefits as it was promised to them, and the current mayor tried to do a switcheroo on them and dilute those health benefits. I'm proud to say that I support 1096, which is the legislation that would require that these retirees get the health benefits that they were promised, which as a city worker is really important to me. All right, Mr.
Sarantopoulos, same question.
I want a little latitude here, if that's okay. The Trump cutout, somebody brought that, so let's be clear on that.
You took photos of that cutout at one of your events.
Yes, absolutely. Listen, I'm a Republican. I'm not ashamed of my candidate. The notion that we should have a professional political class and you keep attacking my record that I don't know you're going to work on day one is ridiculous. We should have a wide diversity of life experience in the city council. We shouldn't have a professional class of elected people that go from college, go to nonprofits, work a small government job, and then go right into the city council.
I also owned a business, and
your husband owned the business, first of all.
Excuse me, sir. We both owned the business, unless you think a woman's ownership doesn't matter.
No, I do not. My wife is a partner in my business.
So was I.
But the notion that you are always leading by saying, hey, I'm an attorney, I have the experience. I have the experience too. I've consulted with candidates as well as elected officials for over a decade. So please, I've also was a comms director for an assemblyman. I've made payroll for 3 decades straight. I've dealt with all kinds of people in the city. So to say that your experience is better than mine is ridiculous.
All right, guys, I'm going to move on to a question that's a little bit more political in nature, but it's about the makeup of your district. It is one of the few truly purple districts in the city. Voters in your district are mostly registered Democrats, and I believe Kamala Harris won the district by a little bit more than 3 points, but there was a significant shift towards Donald Trump in your district as compared to the 2020 election. So let me ask you sort of a two-pronged question. One, why do you think voters shifted towards Trump in the presidential election last year? And then secondly, given the fact that you will have constituents, if you're elected, who are on the other side of the political spectrum, what do you do to appeal to them? Is there an example of maybe a position where you moderate, maybe you're more moderate than others in your party, in order to better represent those people in your district?
Well, that's a two-part of the question. I would say the number one reason why I believe New Yorkers went a little more right and voted for Donald Trump is because we had no control of the border. I mean, this was costing us billions of dollars. I hear it from immigrants who have been here 15, 20 years, who worked their butt off, saved every dollar they can to buy a home, to go to college or send their kids to college. But meanwhile, we have migrants that are coming here to New York City that are staying in luxury hotels. They are the maddest. And the voters, I think, in the last election, got fed up with the border not being controlled and that it's costing the city billions of dollars. And we're having to make choices of schools not getting enough money, libraries closing on Sunday, which just recently opened, and the cuts in city services for people that just got here. We need to take care of lifelong New Yorkers or people that have been here for a while, not importing in poverty.
And a little extra time since I asked you the
Sure,
two-part question. Yeah, is there any position that maybe you're more moderate than other Republicans because you have such a diverse district?
I think that there's parts of Coney Island that are underserved by food deserts, as Michelle Obama said. I think a food co-op modeled on the Park Slope Food Co-op would be very beneficial to Coney Island.
All right, Ms. Santosuosso, two-pronged question.
Yeah. So I think that the shift to Donald Trump was that really he was in the presidential race highlighting the cost of living as the major concern. And, you know, a critique that I had of my own party during that process was that we weren't talking about it enough. And so I understand voters' frustration, you know, when they were feeling that in their pockets and nobody was speaking to it. However, since then, I think people have realized that that wasn't actually his agenda at all. Things aren't getting cheaper, things aren't getting more affordable. And now we have military and ICE and masked police going into cities like Chicago and Portland who are essentially unaccountable, not following due process, arresting U.S. citizens. And this is really terrifying people across the political spectrum. So I think we are seeing that shift, that people are understanding that they were given a bait and switch. As far as my appeal, I think being a small business owner and specifically, you know, running a bar and restaurant, we actually bought our business a year to the day before COVID shut us down. So we had one good year, and then we were playing catch up for many years. I think I've seen the side of things where too much regulation on a small business can really kill it. For example, there are permits that we're required to have for hood cleaning that only the FDNY can do that costs us $500 every quarter or something like that. And there are things that we can do to reduce fines and fees, reduce some of the unnecessary regulation. We can't strangle these businesses and then wonder why they close. And so, you know, that's really a position I take.
Well, let me ask you just really briefly, as a matter of political orientation, how closely do you see yourself to Zoran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee, who is, of course, a Democratic socialist, and a lot of critics say is sort of out of step with New Yorkers' opinions?
Yeah, so I consider myself a Democrat. I get labeled a lot of things by George, and I believe that as a person who stands for strong schools, parks and playgrounds, clean and safe streets and sidewalks, and good, strong libraries, and putting working people first. You can call me whatever you want to call me, but I consider that to be a Democrat.
The notion, okay, I got to jump in here. The notion that, I mean, we keep going back to the same thing, that Republicans want to kill grandma. I mean, that's ridiculous. And two, you are a Democratic socialist. Your club, the Bay Ridge Democrats, supported Zoran Mamdani. Zoran Mamdani has said, I'm a Democratic socialist. You congratulated Linda Sarsour when she became a DSA member. You are a DSAer. Why not just admit it? Be proud.
Well, speaking of labels,
sorry, can I respond to that?
And Republicans want all those things too. They want clean parks, good schools. We just agree. We actually have real solutions, not slogans.
Sorry, just because I was invoked. I am not a member of the DSA. I didn't seek the DSA's endorsement. They have not endorsed me at all. And so you can keep throwing these labels on, but I am the president of the Bay Ridge Democrats, which collectively voted after the primary to endorse the Democratic nominee. You can keep throwing these labels and keep throwing these lies at me. I am a Democrat.
Well, speaking of labels, just very briefly,
by the way,
do you consider yourself a MAGA Republican?
I consider myself a New York Republican. Okay, I'm not an Arkansas Republican or a Mississippi Republican. I'm a New York Republican.
He paid $3,000 to be on a podcast led by a MAGA hat-wearing podcast host. So I'm kind of surprised.
He's a Russian podcaster. He just happens to be MAGA. And listen, he talks to the Russian audience.
But you paid $3,000 to be on his MAGA podcast.
While he also is consulting my campaign on how to reach the Russian voter.
All right, guys, we're going to talk about budgeting. Two of the biggest powers that the city council has are land use and negotiating the city budget. Let me ask you, and Mr. Sarantopoulos, I'll start with you. What is an area of the city budget that you think needs to be reduced? And what's an area of the city budget that you think, where you think maybe funding could be added?
Well, I believe that the problem is, and it's not really part of the city budget, but it's the MTA. I believe that is the black hole of money. We just passed the congestion pricing, and within a year, congestion pricing started, we had a fare increase. And I would say for working families, that's affecting, more people are paying the fare than paying taxes, city taxes. So that is adversely affecting people in the city. We just had an increase from $2.90 to $3. And we have massive fare evasion. We have no control of the finances at the MTA. We need to look at the books there, and that would probably affect New Yorkers' lives more than anything.
And any place where you think the budget should be added?
I think our parks honestly. I think our parks are dirty. I just don't think we're doing enough. I don't think we're keeping our commitment. I believe it's supposed to be 1% of the city budget, and that's just not happening.
All right, Ms. Santosuosso.
Yeah, I was a law department attorney, so I got a front row seat to all of the lawsuits that are filed against the city, and a lot of them that are frivolous and that we could save a lot of money on if we actually gave the law department the resources that it needs to effectively combat all of these frivolous lawsuits that are filed against the city. I have ideas about ways that we can fix that, so that's an area. But an area where I would add, I'd have to agree with George on this one. I do think that parks should be 1% of the city budget, so it's something that I would support. In particular, we have to look at forestry. It's one of the most frustrating jobs as a staffer of a city council member that I have to tell homeowners that the tree adjacent to their property won't get pruned for 10 years and there's almost nothing they can do about it. Meanwhile, branches can be falling on people's heads and sidewalks can be uplifted, and it's a real safety issue. So that's the opportunity I see now.
So you're saying Republicans want clean parks too?
Well, you do. That's great.
Okay.
All right, point of agreement. We're going to move on to our lightning round, where each candidate will answer my questions with a brief response, yes or no, or very, very brief explanation. Let's start with an easy one.
Okay.
Let me ask you your favorite restaurant in District 47.
Chadwick's.
Tannerine, Palestinian cuisine, best of the best.
City Bike just recently began rolling out docking stations in Bay Ridge. Do you support the rollout of City Bike?
I support a limited role. I mean, I think 49 in our community is way too much.
Okay.
I think it was actually 48, and I think it's a good rollout. I actually personally saved around 100 parking spots by tweaking that map, so I'm very proud of that.
Do you think that horse carriage rides should be banned in the city?
I'm coming around to it, so yes.
I would support a ban, but if nothing else, they should be banned from city streets and allowed in Central Park.
Rikers Island, under the current law, is due to be closed by 2027, which is logistically impossible, so the next city council is going to have to negotiate a new law. Do you support closing Rikers in support of these 4 borough-based jails?
No.
Yes.
Congestion pricing, has it been a good thing for the city on balance?
No.
Too early to tell. We have to see if the funds actually flow to our last stop communities.
The Coney Island Casino project, known as the Coney, is now dead. Is that a good thing?
I believe that's what the community wanted, so I'm okay with that.
His wife was a paid lobbyist for the casino.
She's not a
by the
paid
way.
lobbyist. She did a Chinese New Year event.
Yes or no? Good thing
It's
that
an excellent thing. I'm proud to have been part of the no vote that Councilmember.
Okay.
But what was your plan B for the
All
community?
right, guys, we've got to wrap it up. That is going to do it for this debate and for tonight's show. You can catch the exclusive web portion of this debate on ny1.com, where we get into Mayor Adams' legacy, another lightning round, and more. And as a reminder, on Wednesday, New York One will host the second and final debate in the race for mayor. At 6:30 p.m., I'll be joined by some of our New York One reporters and analysts for special coverage before the debate. Then at 7 o'clock, we'll be live from LaGuardia Community College. And on Friday, we will have the general election debate in the race for Manhattan District Attorney. That'll begin at about 7:25 right here on City Hall. And we also have a voter guide for you. You can use the QR code right there on your screen to take you there. That's where you can find all of our other debates, your ballot, and more. And early voting begins this Saturday with polls opening at 9 a.m. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great evening. We will see you the next time on Inside City Hall. Welcome back to Inside City Hall. This is the digital portion of this debate in the race for the 47th City Council District in South Brooklyn. We have a couple more topics we want to get into with you both. I want to ask you guys about Mayor Adams. We are coming up on his last couple of months in office. He's obviously not seeking re-election. I think his time in office has been overshadowed by the federal corruption indictment and the other scandals that have sort of swirled around the administration. But tell me one thing that you agreed with on the mayor, whether that was a position or a policy position or a decision or just some achievement during his time in office.
I agree with Mayor Adams, the direction where he took screen schools and G&T back on track. De Blasio seemed to want to close the program or end them or go to war against them. So Mayor Adams was more open for these specialized high schools, gifted and talented, screen schools. So that's where I think Mayor Adams did a great job for the future of our children.
Ms. Santosuosso.
Yeah, I have to say, I think overall, his approach to rats has been much appreciated by constituents in our district. And that might in part be because of the containerization. I think the city bins were a disastrous idea in that they were rolled out seemingly for trucks that sanitation never was able to roll out, and now these poor sanitation workers are lifting these big heavy bins that were supposed to be lifted by the sanitation trucks. But containerization itself, as far as containing our trash and being the start to getting rid of some of the pests, is I think a good move ultimately.
And just briefly, do you also support the containerization of trash?
I think it's a good idea. I think we need to contain the rat idea. The rats have gotten out of control. I see it all over the place.
Let me ask you about a topic that the City Council may be taking up again this coming year, and that was the effort to expand advice and consent, which would have allowed the City Council to basically vote down the mayor's nominee appointee to head about 20 different city agencies. Would you support, and Ms. Santosuosso, will go back to you, would you support expanding the council's advice and consent powers?
I would, and as someone who's worked in city agencies where there was someone at the head of the agency that was a mayoral appointee, I think it's really important that the council, again, be this co-equal branch of government and be a check on the mayor. And it's good to have that set up no matter who the mayor is in office. So I would expand the use of advise and consent. I think this past mayor has really shown us why that is so important, but we need to have it for every mayoralty. And in general, I'm in favor of making sure that the balance of power is there between the mayor and the city council.
And Mr. Sarantopoulos?
To a limited extent. I mean, listen, Mayor Adams, his criteria for giving people jobs was somebody he went to high school with, or a former police officer or a family member. So I think there's definitely advice and consent needed a little more. I don't want the mayor to come into office or a new mayor to come into office and they can't get the appointments that they need to run the city.
Let me ask you briefly, and I know you were personally invoked in the conversation earlier about the Coney Island casino, if you want to respond to that. And also, given the fact that it was proposed, it was promised that there would be so many jobs and economic activity brought to Coney Island if that casino had actually been placed there. Do you think something else should go in its place to generate that same kind of
Coney Island's been given a lot of promises over the years, from an indoor water park to an upgraded ice skating rink to a movie theater. This is just a long line of promises that have been made by the Democratic Party, who have controlled Coney Island for decades, except for the short period of time where Eric Kagan became a Republican. But for the most part, it was controlled by the Democrats. The casino project dying lost us $100 million for our policing in Coney Island. $300 million was going to go to spend on the community in Coney Island. This is an area with 18% unemployment, probably the highest unemployment rate in the city. So when Councilman Brannan and Reynoso killed this plan, well, what was the plan B?
And just briefly, I know your wife's lobbying efforts was...
My wife's not a lobbyist. She's not a registered lobbyist. She was paid to do community outreach to the Chinese community, and she did a Chinese New Year event.
For the casino.
Yes. Well, it was sponsored by the casino.
Ms. Santosuosso, I'm going to keep you just about 15 seconds here. What do you think should go, if anything, should go in the place of the casino project?
We had a visioning session a week after the proposal was killed, heard a lot of great ideas. It's very limited zoning, so an indoor water park that is 365 was a good suggestion. We also heard food halls, makers fair, but really what Coney Island also really needs on Mermaid, not just surf, is pharmacies, dry cleaners, fresh food, and banks, so that people don't rely only on ATMs.
Okay, we're going to do a second lightning round in addition to the questions we had earlier, just squeeze in a few more. I want to ask you what council member you most admire, with the caveat that you cannot choose your current boss, City Councilman Justin Brannan.
Just don't put me first then.
Well, I got to ask you first. I was about to ask you, what council member?
Oh my gosh, this is really throwing me for a loop here. Oh my goodness, I'm not prepared. I mean, a lot of them are just so great. I really appreciate Gail Brewer for being somebody that deeply understands the law department, deeply understands city agencies, really gets into the nitty gritty. I love that she showed up to the Met Gala with like an open cascade of folders and papers. I admire her.
Gail Brewer is always a safe choice. Which council member do you admire?
God bless him. I gotta say, Councilman Robert Holden. I mean, he straddles the
Democrat, but a very moderate Democrat.
Talks to Democrats and Republicans, straddles the line, able to make both happy. I mean, I should be, as elected as a councilman, I'd love to be that guy.
Okay, a quick round. Mr. Santosuosso, I'll ask you, favorite attraction in Coney Island at the boardwalk?
Williams Candy Store.
Okay.
The aquarium.
Okay. On the topic of transportation, should the New York City ferry go to Coney Island? There's been some issues with the possibilities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. We have a research buoy now that is going to determine if all we need is just a bigger boat, like in Jaws, which would be great. But Coney Island needs that oceanside ferry access.
Do you support non-citizen voting in New York City municipal elections? This was something that was passed by the council. This is not undocumented immigrants, but only those with valid residency in New York.
No.
I believe it was ruled unconstitutional.
It was.
So I'll let the court
Doesn't mean it couldn't come back again. Should restrictions on Airbnb be relaxed somewhat, as a bill currently before the city council would do?
I'd have to look at the particulars, but I would say no.
I don't think so either.
All right, guys. That is going to do it for our bonus section of this debate for City Council District 47. Again, thank you both for joining us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.